Hey everyone. Cheers. Seltzer water. Very boring. Um, well, this is my return to doing my comic book thoughts. Hopefully, I can start doing it regularly. But no promises. Who knows? Backed by popular demand, one person asked what happened to these comic book thoughts and hoped they would come back. Um, I amassed a large pile in front of me of things I might talk about. A lot of it's DC, but yeah. So I'll try to plow through some stuff. Uh, I have dropped Batman. I probably should have done it at the end of the first arc and just gone to trades there. I just let the the Monster Men issues come in, and I never read them. Then I started reading this Suicide one. It was not badly done. It's not like the worst Batman comic in the world, but it's so clear that Tom King in the first arc was setting up some stuff, and now in this arc he's setting up some stuff, and it's all about everything's always going to be setting up something for something else. It's just editorial games, I guess, or for the where we want to get the character next for the next event and that kind of thing. So this is gonna surely tie in with all the Suicide Squad crossovers that are coming up. And I'm not that interested in Batman running his own Suicide Squad. I'm not convinced that there's any reason for him to do it. Why does he need these people to go after Bane and Psycho Pirate? At this point, I'm not at all convinced. It just seems it's being done because of the popularity of Suicide Squad and nothing else. And that, comics are, a lot of okay comics are done for commercial reasons and following the trends and everything. But I think I had my hopes set too high for Tom King, and I'd rather just personally kind of cool off and maybe read this in the trade if I hear other people saying it actually turned out to be really great. Or if it's not that great, just get it out of the library someday. The Mikhail Janin art was awesome, so that was the hardest part about deciding to drop this. But I have too much to read. I have to drop something, so the things that just don't give me the biggest kick, the biggest emotional connection or whatever, they're gonna go. So the Batman comic I plan to keep reading is Detective Comics, and these first two issues of the Victim Syndicate arc I thought were quite good. Good art, well-paced stories, especially the second issue of 944, the one I just read today. It had really good pacing. I thought things slowed down a little bit in 943, a little bit too much of it reminded me a little bit more of the old Tinian, who can't finesse things as well as the new Tinian can. But it's really quite pleasing to see what a good writer James Tinian has become. And I think we, in the two Batman Forever comics weekly series, we saw signs of him becoming a really good writer, good plotter, person who can really hit the emotional points really nicely. And this reminded me a bit of some of those Batman and Robin, and was it called Batman and Robin Forever, really? Was it Batman and Forever? No, Batman Eternal? Now I can't remember. Those weekly series that they did, which were kind of show run by Tinian. Anyway, he does a really good job with this ensemble of Bat characters. It's almost a deconstruction of the whole idea of the ensemble of Bat characters and the teenagers, and a deconstruction of the idea of crime in Gotham and what its real cause is, and what's the right way to handle crime in Gotham. It's really questioning the whole existence of Batman. On that level, it's a little bit like Snyder, in the sense that Snyder always wanted to go for the big metaphor and the big picture, but it's done in a more down-to-earth way, and in many ways is better than Snyder. I mean, Snyder at his best was really good. So, but then Snyder at his worst was really bad. So I can't compare it directly to Snyder, but I feel like he's taking some of the elements Tinian is of Snyder, but not at all slavish to them or anything like that. So he really is his own writer now, and Detective Comics is really satisfying. Although I tweeted out there was this one. There's a silly. So these are kind of silly villains because they're all based on their victimization by Batman, and one is named Mr. Noxious. Yep, Mr. Noxious. There he is. And I guess just by looking at spoiler, he makes her vomit up a giant geyser of green goo. I thought that this felt suddenly like Enos comic book or some underground spoof of comics or something. With all the vomit, it just seemed very un-Batman-like to me. Superman has continued to be excellent. This issue was an especially strong issue. I think they're doing a lot of like this Dinosaur Island one. They're doing a lot of 2-issue arcs, which I really like. It's of course especially wonderful when Patrick Gleason and his color artist Kalish are working together on the art, and the fact that Gleason is the writer here too, or the co-writer here too, just makes a lot of the emotions really work. So yeah, this is making me really look forward to the Super Sons in a way that I never would have under any other writer. But as long as Tomasi is on those Super Sons, he'll really know their characters. He really gets kids as much as you can in a superhero context. But every page of this issue was a delight. You could drop in on Superman with this issue. It'd be a good starting point. You could grab the 2 previous issues of Escape from Dinosaur Island, but they are actually meaningless plot-wise, at least at the moment. Maybe they'll touch back to them someday, but it was just a little romp. It was okay. But yeah, I would, if you're not reading Superman and you're hearing everybody buzzing about it, this is a great issue to jump in. I mean, it's a Superman Superboy story. A new kind of Superboy. Superboy who's actually the son of Superman. Okay, veering away from DC for just a little bit, I got Terry Moore's Motor Girl. And I enjoyed it. I felt like it went off in a bunch of different directions, kind of real estate, PTSD, cartoony humor with someone talking with an ape, and cute aliens showing up who don't know how to repair their own spaceship, but the human and the ape can do it. But then today on a live hangout of Rez Reads, her hangouts are highly recommended, very lively. It was mentioned that, so a bit of a spoiler here, I guess. I didn't even figure this out from reading this issue, but I guess I should have. That this ape is a figment of Motor Girl's imagination. So I'm going to have to reread that to... I'm sure that the people saying that are right. I think there might even have come from an interview with Terry Moore. But I'm going to have to reread it and think about everything. If the ape is imaginary, what else is imaginary? I mean, these aliens seem somehow even less realistic and less reasonable to believe in than the ape. So a lot of this story, the imaginative parts of this story, are now open for consideration as imaginary. And maybe there's further twists coming up. Maybe the ape, although invisible to other people, is real in some way. There were things that the ape said during the course of the comic that made me think that his kind were somehow integrated into their society, but I guess not. So I don't have much time for rereading comics, but I'm definitely rereading Motor Girl #1. I didn't feel the buy-in here that I felt upon when I first read Rachel Rising. Now, I did first read Rachel Rising as a trade, so that might be the difference. Maybe if I read 6 issues of this in a row, I'd totally buy in. I feel like even in reading the trade of Rachel Rising, I was sucked in by what would have been the very first issue there. But it's hard to completely judge one's psychology on these things. A completely different indie comic, Skyborn by Frank Cho. So this is some weird combination of spies and King Arthur and other things. I mean, these are the children of Lazarus, so is there a biblical element? It's supposed to be a 6-issue mini. Maybe he's planning a series of minis, because it doesn't feel like, we're 2 issues in. It doesn't feel like we can encompass all of these people's worlds in 6 issues. And you can see Cho kind of scrambling to get as much information as he can in with all these talking head scenes, which is unfortunate. I occasionally seem to, like, I noticed this in the Spawn that was being written by Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson together. And I don't know what Todd McFarlane's recent Spawns written by himself are like, but a lot of over-explaining. And you just think an artist, when he's on his own and not encumbered by a writer, would think more in ways to act out relationships and act out aspects of things rather than so many talking heads. I mean, there are scenes that are purely visual, but then there are scenes that are just yakety, yakety, yakety. So one of the actual skills of a writer for comics is to think visually and resist the temptation to just fill in information through lots of dialogue. But there's some very cool scenes in here, some cool ideas, cool characters, I think. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading the rest of the series. Cho's art's very nice. And the colorist, I do kind of want, like, the colorist fills in so many of the details of the face, the wrinkles there, and the lighting and such. Well, the lighting you'd expect, but is this line work that Cho's done that the colorist is then in Photoshop altered into kind of a painted look? Or how much does the colorist put in there? We'll never know. I'm sure it varies from colorist to colorist and artist teams vary. I've noticed some original art where it seems like they put in gray tones, and these gray tones maybe somehow are guides to the color artist for shaping the face or other details in there. Just guessing. Birthright, which I've been enjoying all along, in the last 2 issues has kicked up to a higher notch, and I think this is the end of an arc. So we've had a lot of revelations, a lot of things have become much more interconnected in Birthright between Earth and the Terranos, the imaginary world, and between all the different characters that we've met. They're all much more closely linked. So that's just becoming more and more of an interesting story. I can't get over how good and how well written I feel this book is, and how badly written I feel the same writer's Flash comics are. I have just dropped the Flash, by the way. Saga, which just goes on and on like a saga, right? But it's more like a soap opera. It's chapter 39. This issue seemed... I've known that it was a soap opera for a long time, yes, but it just seems so much about being a soap opera and not other things like a science fiction novel or a political story or a romance or anything. It seemed most of all to be a soap opera. In my mind, I've changed the title of the book to Soap Opera. I guess it wouldn't sell as well as Saga. Now, a saga is supposed to be a very long story, but I think it's supposed to be one that, I don't know, tells you a lot about a culture or something. And really, the culture, the worlds here are just flimsy scenery. The difference between aliens, even a panda-looking alien and a girl with horns, isn't that great, to the point where I'm going to spoil the shocking scene of the week. The little girl has a mouth-to-mouth kiss with the panda creature, and they are in love. I guess this whole book is based on interspecies romance, but those 2 species looked somewhat similar. One could imagine they had a genetic background together. But anyway, not to be taken too seriously because it's soap opera. It's not so much telling us about things as exploiting things to titillate us and move us forward through the story and give us emotional highs and downs that are, we're just going to keep going up and down, right? And that's how I think of a soap opera. I haven't read the latest issue of Faith, which has Hillary Clinton on the cover. Now that Hillary's lost, I feel a little less excited to read it, but I'm sure it's good. These two issues where Faith goes to a comic book convention and fights a bad guy there who has a magical thing that makes duplicates of people was a ton of fun, full of great insider jokes for people who've been to Comic Cons or know about geeks, and still a great story, and then a kind of moving sacrifice type of thing at the end. So to me it had everything, and Jody Houser, who I thought was just kind of so-so on the first Faith miniseries, has become an awesome writer on Faith. She not only has a handle on the character, which she always had, but on the kinds of stories that bring out interesting things about the character. So I'm loving Faith from Valiant. Back to the DC. Let's see, how long have I yacked for? Wow, 15 minutes to cover that many comics, not too bad. Action Comics is the lesser Superman book, but it's the same set of characters, but it's so different that it's kind of fun for me in that sense, a different side of the same story. But things kind of in this two-issue Lois Lane arc, if you can call it that, two-issue Lois Lane beat, things get to a ridiculous point. I'm going to spoil the ending of it again because that's what bothered me. Lois goes to Lois number 2, Lois from Earth 2 or whatever Earth these guys are from, where Lois and Clark are older and have a child and have been in hiding in our world since their universe was destroyed. This older Lois wants to find out what happened to Lois Lane, and she goes to investigate. And part of her investigation is she pretends to be this Earth's Lois Lane, and she discovers, as readers of Superwoman know, Lois Lane is dead. This world's Lois Lane, and at the end of this arc, she decides, because she doesn't want to hurt people's feelings and have Lois's family and her friends find out that Lois is dead, she decides to take Lois's place. Is that, yes, I would be very sad if my wife was dead. Would I want someone to take her place who looks just like her and pretend to be her to save me from those feelings? No, when I find out, I'd be freaked out. This seems like a really bad decision. I guess the desire is just to get Lois and this new Superman more closely involved with the Daily Planet and daily life in Metropolis. And it's kind of nice to make this Lois a more important character, and this older, more experienced Mother Lois is a very interesting character. So on that level, it's going to be interesting. But it just seems off. It seems an odd, weird choice. I'm kind of sad they did kill off the real Lois. I would have just liked the real Lois to continue. I have this feeling in my gut that someday, because they have this Clark Kent, who's Clark Kent but not Superman, and probably some fake construct or something, eventually something will happen to him, and then our Superman, who's the older Superman, older Clark from another universe, will get to take his place, and then they'll both be back at the Daily Planet, and we can have Clark and Lois at the Daily Planet. How they'll explain that they're suddenly married, or will they keep that hidden? I don't know. It's amusing and funny, but at the same time, I kind of wish they don't do that, but I kind of see it heading that way. We'll see. But there's the next issue, which I haven't read yet, has Lex Luthor on the cover again. I really like that dynamic. I like that after that overly long Doomsday story. They've done a bunch of short stories. So I still feel like Action Comics is pretty strong and well worth my reading because I'm into Superman. I like Superman. I've always liked Superman, but I've always dumped Superman if it's not good. But now it's really good, so I want to get as much of it as I can. I really had high hopes for Dead Man, Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love. I thought maybe they'd find an interesting way to use Dead Man. They put it in this prestige format, Squarebound, sort of mini graphic novel or Squarebound comic. Has really, really nice art. But it just belly flopped for me. I just did not get into the characters. I did not feel the romance. I did not feel the horror. I just didn't feel very much. And it just all felt very like slush to me. Just kind of melted away in my hands. Which is too bad. It's written by Sarah Vaughn, who was a co-writer on a favorite comic a few years back. What was that called? Artificial Intelligence? Was that what it was called? No. The romance with the guy with the robot. Maybe that was called Artificial Intelligence. Why can't I think of it? Okay, speaking of romance, we've got Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman back together, and first we read about them getting back together in issue 9. They have a long romantic conversation, and then we're seeing sort of the beginnings of their romance in the Wonder Woman year 1. I think there's only one more issue left to year 1, and I feel like that's going to be it, because it feels like they're just starting. Anyway, they'll have to call it something else, because Nicola Scott will have moved on. I almost wonder if Greg Rucka is going to move on soon. After this, issue 8 was really good, kind of a one-shot about Cheetah, a.k.a. Dr. Barbara Minerva. That was really good, but it felt like it needed another issue about her to lead up the rest of the way to her becoming Cheetah. And it also felt very distracting because we already have 2 storylines, and now we're doing flashbacks to a 3rd storyline. Yet this was a very good storyline. But I found both these 2 issues to really kind of fall flat again for me. Just as I was beginning to enjoy this Wonder Woman series, it started to fall flat again. And I don't think Greg, despite, all his, like, I've seen him on panels talking about this and seeming like he's just really into Wonder Woman and stuff, I don't feel like he's putting his best foot forward here. I'm not a Greg Rucka expert, but it's been very wobbly for me. So I'm not dropping it yet, but I'm just thinking that I might in the future. I'm curious to see what he does after these sort of twinned arcs, if he's got something up his sleeve. Okay, I was about to drop Doom Patrol. I thought, well, issue 3, I give things 3 issues. I was still really irritated by issue 2. But then there was enough stuff that they really hooked me with issue 3, such as the comic within the comic, which is shown on the cover. It was really super appealing to me. And the kind of revelation that our hero isn't just a spunky average girl in on an ambulance team, but is a fictional character come to life, and comes from this weird sentient street. Was that from Grant Morrison? It sounds like a Grant Morrison thing. But I love how they do a kind of a golden age cover there, and then some golden age pages, sort of. And then they skip ahead to a Bronze Age classic. That really helped win me over, and the revelation here. I'm not sure. I didn't get. Apparently now she has some kind of. Suddenly a scar appears on her chin. It seems like a lightning bolt. Made me think of Harry Potter for some reason, but I don't know if that was a reference to that. So it's coalescing together enough, and the art is so great that that I'm gonna keep on Doom Patrol for the foreseeable future now. So issue 3 pulled it back from the precipice for me. And sort of belatedly, I picked up Shade the Changing Girl. I couldn't find my copy of issue 1 right now when I wanted to talk about it. I liked issue 1, but I struggled with it. And maybe there's a little bit of this in all the Young Animals. I read issue 1 of Cave Carson and just dropped it like that. And that is that they're coming at me from out of the DC universe, and there's a bit of a Vertigo vibe there. I kind of expect stories that will suck me in and have kind of, even though Vertigo stories are weird, they kind of have the storytelling that you expect that will suck you in, create the world, create the characters. And these comics have a more these young animal comics have a more what I'm calling a Brandon Graham vibe. It's a little more like reading Multiple Warheads, where things seem to just kind of wander around a bit and then they come together a little bit. And it's as much about the interesting side details as it is about the central characters and central plot. So that's particularly how I felt with reading the first issue of Shade the Changing Girl. It was like, things are maybe happening, maybe not. With some delightful art and some interesting, cute details and stuff. But, so after reading issue 1 and thinking about it that way, I think maybe then I approached issue 2 better, and I just felt really into it. One of my other problems with issue 1 was it's this character whose body she's taken over was so unlikable, and yet everyone would do what she said, and probably that's true to some people's high school experience, but it just was too far from my own experiences to buy into. If someone was too bossy, we just didn't hang out with her. But this person had some special control over everyone, even her parents. But it just, I don't know, it just had a nice balance of this whimsical wandering around and some actual story developing that I really liked it. So I think I'm definitely going to stick with Shade the Changing Girl and probably continue with Doom Patrol unless it suddenly throws me off again. I really like the way this is colored too. The color really helps tell the story and give the story its vibe. So who is the colorist? I haven't even paid attention to that. Where is the credits? The colors is someone named Kelly Fitzpatrick. That's another interesting thing about the Young Animals, well, except for Mother Gotham or whatever she's called. They are bringing in artists and even colorists who I've never heard of before yet, who are at a very high level of quality art and storytelling and style and everything. So, proving more. I went into Young Animals very cynical, and there's still an aspect of the writing in Doom Patrol that at times reminds me more of song lyrics than of prose that moves along the story. Okay, well, I have talked myself out. I want to be silent for a while. Talk to you all later.